Hi, welcome back to Christine's Home Affairs. We have another quick little scrap buster for you today, and this one is going to just be using little 2-inch strips of fabric. I'm sure most of us have lots and lots of little strips of fabric lying around, and with what you've got lying around you can make up a whole bunch of these little coin purses. They're using regular zips, couple of strips of fabric and your swivel clips. Really simple to make. Come along and join me whilst I make up a few of these for the shop. Okay, here's what we're going to be using today. As this is a scrap buster project, we're just going to be using a couple of small strips of fabric. Now you can easily use Jellyroll strips for these. So we need 4 pieces in total, whether you have 4 different types or 2 on each side. It's completely up to you. So we need 4 pieces all up that are 14 by 5 centimetres or 5.5 by 2 inches. For the lining we need 2 pieces of fabric that are 14 by 7.5 centimetres or 5.5 by 3 inches. I'm making a few of these, so I've got a long strip. If you're just going to make one, then for the loop or the tab on the side of your pouch, you'll need 4 by 6 centimetres or 1 3/4 by 2.5 inches. But as I said, I'm going to be making quite a few, so I've got one long strip. What you will want to do with that long strip is fold it in half, then fold the raw edges into the centre, and then fold that in half again, and we'll sew down both long edges. Then we need a lobster clip or a swivel clip. This is about 1/2 inch or 12 millimetres. It's just big enough so that when I sew up this tab, I can feed that through the loop and attach it to my pouch. I'm just using a regular dress zip today. These ones are a little bit long, but they're the smallest that I have in stock at the moment. A 15 centimetre or a 6-inch zip will do. This one is about 7 inches in length. And the final thing you're going to need is a little bit of fusible fleece. You just want to have a really lightweight, because we're going to fuse it to the whole project. So a lightweight fusible fleece will be ideal. And again, I'm just using scraps for this project. This one is called Parlan, but you can use Matilda's Own. You can use a quilt batting if you've got scraps of that, or even an interfacing. So I reckon we can get started now. Whether you're making one or a batch of these, if you just got a small piece, fold it in half again, and sew down both long edges. For me, I'm going to take this to the machine shortly and sew down both long edges, and then I can cut that into 4 pieces, because that's how many I'm making today. With your fabric pieces, take your fusible fleece and iron that to the wrong side of your fabric. So I've done that for all of these. And once you've done that, we can start putting it together. Now I'm just using 2 colours in mine today. Take one of these, place that directly over the top, and the other one, and place that directly over the top as well. If you prefer to use pins or clips, you can go ahead and do that. I'm going to be using my double-sided tape. So I will put all of those layers together, take that to the machine, sew down one long edge here, and whilst I'm there, I'll also do the fabric for the tabs. All right, let's do the little tab strip first. Okay, both of the layers are together. I will do a 1/4 inch seam allowance here. I'm just using a number 90 or size 14 needle for this project. And because this is such a small project, my seam allowance is only going to be about 1/4 inch or 6 millimetres. Backstitch. Backstitch at the end, and then I'll just feed the next one straight on after. But I'll backstitch at the beginning and the end again. Now that that's done, I'll open it out and top stitch. So I usually let the fabric talk to me and tell me which way it's going to top stitch, but the thread colour that I've got on here is only a pale mauve, so I think I'm going to top stitch the patterned fabric. So the seam here is pointing to my right. Slide this across, making sure that seam is underneath, and then I'll just top stitch close to that edge there, making sure that the seam underneath is caught up in the sewing. When I top stitch, I like to increase my stitch length to, well, for this one probably just 3.5. And I'll do the same for the next one. Just feed it straight on afterward. Alright, we've got our pairs made up here. We've got one for the front and one for the back. And if you're making a few of these, then just cut them up into roughly 2.5 inch lengths. And one of these will be for each bag. Grab your swivel clip, place the fabric into the loop there, and I'll set that aside for the time being because I want to put my zip on before I add this to the side. It'll just reduce some of the bulk that we're playing around with. Grab your zip. I'm using double-sided tape. If you don't want to use that, then just use pins or clips. Place that over the top of your fabric, and whether you're using 1 or 4 colours, it really doesn't matter. It's up to you how many scrap pieces you've got. But what I'm going to do is alternate my colours. So instead of having my bag the same top and bottom, I'm going to have the pansies at the top on one side and on the bottom of the bag on the other side. And that will also help me when I'm putting the side seams together later as well. So the fabric will actually butt together and it'll lock in nicely. So if I have the opposing colours, that'll work better for me. So I've just run a couple of strips of double-sided tape on here. Before you do this, you want to decide whether or not you're going to have curved bottoms or just have a straight or even a boxed bottom on these little pouches. Because they're so small, I think I'd rather have them curved at the bottom. What I'm going to do on the bottom of one of these bag pieces is flip that over and I'll mark a curve at the bottom there. The curve can be whatever size you like and made with whatever round object you've got. If you need a measurement for that, it is 2 centimetres or 3/4 of an inch from the side edges. Place the two pieces together. I've lined up both bottom edges of the fabric and I'll cut those out together. And I'll do the same for the lining. And now that I have my curved edges prepared, I can run some double-sided tape along the top. And I'll take my zip. I've gone and put my labels on these bag pieces, and these are usually the front. Place your zip face down with the zipper head or the closed end close to the side edge of the fabric. And that will sit on your fabric like this. Run some more tape along the top. And grab one of your lining pieces and place that over the top as well, lining up the side edges of your bag and then the top edge. So when you take this to the machine, you're going to sew down this long edge here, then you'll open it out, have both layers of fabric behind one another, and we can top stitch. Let's take this side to the machine now, and then we'll come back and do the other. And with that done, all I need to do is flip the fabric over, press that lining away from the zip and put that behind your fabric, and then we can top stitch. So we want both layers of fabric together. Because this is such a little project, I'm just sewing from one end to the other. I'm not worrying about zipper tabs because it'll make the whole inside too small, and we'll be sewing over the end of the zips later as well. This is really just designed to be a very quick, scrappy project to get rid of some of your offcuts and maybe sell a few. Okay, I've already got my double-sided tape on here. I can just place that directly over the top, lining up the side and then the top edge where the zip is. Flip that around, put some more tape on the other side of the zip and grab your other lining piece. Now when you're putting your lining pieces together, if this has a print on it, then you want to have your printed fabric pieces facing each other. And again, line up the sides. And we'll sew that and top stitch it again. And we'll open that out, give it a press, as well as your lining. With the zip installed and the top stitching done, we can now put our little tab on. So the tab can go anywhere along the side, doesn't matter whether you put on the back or front. You want to remove your lining, so place that to the back of your fabric. You want this attached just to the outer fabric. I'll place this tab close to the top edge of the fabric. We need to close up the end where the zip is, but obviously you need to move your zip slider over to the other side. To make it easier to close your zip when we put the bag together, I find a little piece of adhesive tape works wonders. I'll open my zip and I'll place this tape onto the fabric. That will hold the zipper teeth in place, and then I will just go and sew over the teeth here a couple of times. So just go forward, back and forward. We don't need to do this side because we can trim that off later. You want to make sure now that your zip is at least 2/3 open, and that way you won't forget to do it later. I will quickly go and sew this little end of the zip, and I'll attach this tab on as well. Double check that you've got your lining on one side and your clip over this side. And then when you're sewing this section where the zip is, you want to make sure you have one piece of lining on this side and the other one on the other side. So you'll need to spread the lining apart, and you only want to sew just over the zipper tape. The end of the zip here has been closed up, so that's nice and secure, and the zip slider isn't going to go anywhere. From here on, you need to make sure you've got your zip open. Now we're going to take our outer pieces and bring the side edges together until you have these two seams meeting. Move the lining out of the way and just give that a wiggle until your fabric has locked in together, or at least you've matched up those side seams. From there you can line up the center where the zip is and the curve, and we'll repeat that for the other side. If the zip's in your way, feel free to go and cut it off. I usually do them last. I've lined up the seam on the side again, then line up your lining. We're going to leave an opening at the bottom edge of the lining here. Start sewing here with a back stitch, come around the curve, up to the zip. I'll go forward, back and forward, keep going around. Because I've got a lot of bulk in this section here, I'll go forward, back and forward again and keep on going around. I'll repeat the same process on the other side and finish here with a back stitch. Then we can trim our zips, clip the curves and turn it the right way around. We're going to need to start with a back stitch at the bottom where you're going to leave the opening. Otherwise, when you pull your fabric, it's all going to unravel. So you just want to make sure that's nice and secure. And then as you go around the curve, go nice and slowly. I'm coming up to the edge where the zip is, and this side of the lining is just a little bit on the floppy side, so I usually try to help that with my screwdriver and just hold it down. I've got my tab on this side, so I'll go over that as well because there's so much bulk there. And this side seam here where the seams are overlapping. And then I'll go slowly around the curve. And then I'll leave a small opening of about 3 fingers width. Alright, now that we've finished sewing this up and left our opening, we can clip our curves or trim it very close to the edge. I've got a pinking blade here. If you've got pinking shears, they'll do the job. If you don't have either, then just snip into your curves. Then we can trim the ends of our zip. And now we can turn it the right way around and see how it looks. Once you've turned it around and everything looks good, just bring your edges together and we'll take that to the machine and sew it closed. And we have just a quick little stitch along the bottom edge. I'm sewing very close to the folded edge there. and you're finished. And there we have our 4 little tiny coin pouches. So I've made all of these exactly the same size, and we've got the paisley fabric up the top at one side and the pansy fabric on the other. They're a great way to use up lots of scrap fabric and all of those little zips that you might have. Now, I'm not one to hide imperfections from you, so I am going to show you something that I don't like in the technique of making these little pouches. Normally when I put zips in, you'll know I'll put a tab in at both ends of my zip, and this allows the zip to sit really nice and straight across the top on both sides, and it just sits really nice in the corners. So you can see here that the corners curve in a little bit. That's because of the bulk of the fabric on the inside. You don't get that when you put tabs on your zips. And on this side here, when you open it up, the lining kind of sticks up a little bit, and it's really difficult to try and keep that down so that it doesn't have any bulky bits on the inside. For these little projects, it's really not an issue, but it's not something that I like in my products. So I try not to do that too often at all. But when you've got a project this small, you can't really help it unless you use the butler method for inserting your zips. And to be honest, I can't be bothered turning them in on the sides. So that's about the only thing that I don't like with these little zippered pouches, is just the way they're finished on the top ends of the zips. But they certainly work well. They didn't take long at all, did they? I had run out of stock of these in the shop the other day, and a customer had asked for them, so that's why I needed to make up a few more today. I'll go through my scraps and make up a whole batch of them as well. These are very much like my Itty Bitty bags, which have been really popular over the past few years. The Itty Bitty bags that I'd made had a little handle on them, and they were also made with a long strip of fabric using only half a zip as well. You can eliminate the little dent in the side of the pouch by making this twice as long, using half a zip. Go and follow that video, I'll pop a link up there. So that's the Itty Bitty bag, and make it without the handle. Put the swivel clip on the side instead. The little Itty Bitty bags that I have in the shop I sell for $10. I think I'll probably put $10 on these as well. I put the clock on and they take me about 13 minutes to make. And if I make a really big batch of these, it's going to go even quicker than that. So my labour costs can come down with that. As most of my fabric has been given to me, I don't have any actual cost for the fabric. The zips, a few cents each. The clips are only a few cents each. And the labels that I've got on here are probably about 30 cents each as well. So $10 for these is more than enough for the time it takes me to make the bags. And I kind of like the colour as well. The pansies and the paisley, they work really well together. I'm sure purple lovers around the world are going to love them. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I shall catch you next time. Bye for now.